Most people think financial freedom means quitting your job and taking crazy risks. But Pabrai's approach proves the opposite. Win big, lose little. The challenge is time. With more distractions than ever, the real edge isn't just what you invest in, it's how you manage your hours. And when structured right, that can give you an extra 8 to 16 focused hours every month without sacrificing sleep. In this video, you'll get 3 things: a time blocking pattern that fits a 9-5, a cloning checklist for low-risk side projects, and 3 tools to save time immediately. And it all starts with understanding why time itself is the most valuable asset you own. Why time is your greatest investment asset. When people think about investing, their minds jump to stocks, crypto, or real estate. But the real foundation isn't money, it's time. Unlike dollars, hours can't be earned back once spent. That's why before worrying about wealth strategies, the smarter move is to examine how your daily hours either multiply your progress or quietly disappear. The hidden drain for most people today is the amount of attention consumed by screens and constant app use. It's not just for work or communication. Scrolling, streaming, and notifications now eat up huge chunks of free time. What feels like a harmless routine slowly becomes a force, stealing the hours that could otherwise compound into skills, projects, or assets. This erosion is subtle. You don't see what you've lost in a single evening, but across months, the impact is identical to a portfolio, losing small percentages year after year. The illusion of productivity often comes from multitasking. Switching between emails, chats, and entertainment convinces us that we're accomplishing more, but every switch costs recovery time. Studies have shown that even a short distraction can take several minutes before full focus returns. Over the course of a day, that means entire hours are lost, not to rest, not to recreation, but to the mental tax of fractured focus. Those are hours that could have built expertise, created output, or developed ideas. A better way to see it is through compounding. Investors know that when capital stays protected and reinvested, it grows faster than most people expect. Time acts the same way. Protect one uninterrupted block, and its value increases because the results it produces save or create future hours. Instead of chasing extra hacks, the goal is to guard those blocks and let the compounding cycle work in your favor. Without discipline, time fragments until nothing meaningful accumulates. With it, each protected block fuels the next. So here's a practical experiment. This week, set one 90-minute window where you protect your attention completely. No notifications, no switching tasks, no background chatter. Treat it like an unbreakable meeting. At the end, measure not just how much you got done, but how different the output feels compared to your usual scattered hour. That single period of deep focus often outperforms an entire half-day of multitasking. The contrast proves that compounding is not abstract math. It's something you can feel in one work session. This also removes the common excuse that life is too unpredictable for schedules. Emergencies happen, but structure is not about guessing every variable. It's about creating default patterns. When the unexpected subsides, those patterns bring you back into focus without wasting weeks rebuilding motivation. Think of it less as rigidity and more as insurance. You're not forcing every moment, you're giving yourself a reliable baseline that recovers quickly from disruption. And discipline doesn't have to feel like a loss of freedom. On the contrary, it can make leisure better. Block time for meaningful work, and when you rest, you can enjoy it without guilt. 2 hours of streaming after you've already protected and invested a focused block feels different than the same streaming after a day of scattered distraction. The first is a surplus reward. The second is avoidance. That shift may sound psychological, but it has direct effects on how you use and value every hour. For those who say they simply don't have time, the numbers suggest otherwise. Even reclaiming one small habit, like reducing pointless app use by 15 minutes a day, returns more than 90 hours over a year. That's over 2 full work weeks of time redirected toward learning, building, or earning without sacrificing rest or income. And if you expand it to an hour a day, you free more than 15 work weeks annually. That's time to acquire new skills, run focused side projects, or explore small ventures that could grow into significant assets. The principle is straightforward. Compounding applies to hours the same way it applies to capital. An hour optimized today might not change tomorrow, but repeat it daily and the growth multiplies. If missed, the cost isn't visible immediately, but the trajectory flattens quietly over months and years. Protect the hours and momentum builds, waste them and you lock yourself into stagnancy. No hacks are required. The only requirement is to treat hours like a balance sheet, finite, measurable, and either working for you or against you. So here's your action for the next 7 days. Notice one app you open automatically without thinking. Replace a single 15-minute session on that app with 15 minutes of deliberate learning or focused creation. You'll not only reclaim real time, you'll prove to yourself that compounding growth begins with the smallest shifts in attention. And once you've begun to protect time this way, the next question isn't just about saving those hours, it's about where you place them. Too many people waste years trying to invent something entirely new when established working models already exist. That belief shapes how hours are spent and whether they lead to momentum or to dead ends. That brings us to the next essential principle: the cloning advantage in 2025. The next principle is what Monish Pabrai calls shameless cloning, part of his broader Dandho approach. Instead of chasing originality at all costs, he shows that most success comes from taking something that's already proven and applying it with discipline. His philosophy is simple: heads, I win big; tails, I don't lose much. In 2025, the advantage of cloning is sharper than ever because technology and platforms make it both faster to start and safer to test. The common trap is believing wealth demands an idea so fresh it changes the world. But when you study the record of great businesses, most didn't begin with originality. Microsoft copied many of its early ideas, like operating systems and software tools, then scaled them more effectively than competitors. Walmart took discount retail, a concept already working, and cloned it across small towns with ruthless consistency. Neither got stuck waiting for a light bulb moment. They borrowed working blueprints, focused on execution, and built empires from what was already validated. The point isn't theft, it's leverage. Too many people stall because they waste months dreaming about originality. They sketch logos, fantasize about billion-dollar valuations, brainstorm endlessly, and never launch. Someone else who simply clones a system, adapts it, and puts it into practice within weeks ends up compounding faster. The question is who's smarter. It's who's willing to skip the fantasy and start building with models that already succeed. Cloning doesn't mean stripping away individuality. It shifts where your energy goes. Instead of obsessing over whether your idea is unique, you anchor your time in proven templates and spend effort on execution. Shopify storefronts are ready-made examples. You don't need to design custom code or invent layouts that convert. You can take an optimized template, change branding and products to suit your customers, and launch in days. That saves you 6 months of figuring out details that experts already solved. You're not copying the entire identity. You're planting yourself on a foundation that frees you to compete on service, pricing, and marketing. Advertising illustrates the same concept. In the past, writing good copy was expensive, trial and error intensive, and often meant hiring specialists. Today, AI tools analyze thousands of campaigns and spit out structures that are already proven to work. You don't have to invent a philosophy of persuasion. You just feed the tool comparable products, guide its tone, and refine the output for your specific market. Minutes of effort can produce ad variations modeled on campaigns that already convert. That's shameless cloning in its 2025 form. Reduce risk by leaning on tested examples, then spend your hours tailoring them to your customer. Franchising is another classic cloning method, but now it has evolved into something more accessible. Instead of multi-million-dollar fast food franchises, micro-franchises exist across delivery services, tiny gyms, and regional food brands. Someone else has already figured out logistics, training systems, and supply chains. All you do is operate the model in your market. It's still your effort, your leadership, your earnings, but the foundation is pre-made. This heads, I win, tails, don't lose much approach is exactly what Pabrai highlights repeatedly. You're stacking the odds in your favor by entering games where failure costs little, but success compounds over time. For people balancing a 9-to-5, cloning also solves the harshest constraint: limited hours. Nights and weekends aren't enough to invent an industry. They are enough to copy a tested model and steadily refine it. That's why this approach matters. It matches the real resources you have. You may not have the bandwidth for original breakthroughs, but you can run a Shopify shop, test AI-driven ad campaigns, or license a micro-franchise, all without blowing up your schedule. So how do you put shameless cloning into action? Treat it as a 3-step playbook, not a theory. First, find a model that already works. That could be a digital product, a blog format, a local service, or a small franchise you see succeeding. Second, copy and lightly tweak it for your own audience, use different branding, adapt the tone, narrow the niche. Third, test quickly. Don't overthink. If you work a regular job, pick 2 evenings this week to launch something simple, like cloning an existing product idea into a small online shop. The goal is speed and risk reduction, not waiting for a spark of genius. This lens also changes psychology. With originality, setbacks feel fatal. You don't know if the idea itself is doomed. With cloning, setbacks are smaller. If something doesn't work, the model is still solid, you just need to adjust your execution. That safety net produces persistence. You're more likely to keep iterating when you're not carrying the weight of proving a whole new concept. Critics argue cloning prevents you from standing out. But history shows the opposite. Uniqueness grows on top of solid foundations. Restaurants that use a familiar menu style but fold in regional flavors become both recognizable and distinct. Online shops that use standard layouts can still dominate through speed of delivery, loyalty programs, or sharper content. The clone provides the skeleton, your execution provides the personality. Originality still plays a role, but it's layered onto a structure that already prevents collapse. The measure of risk here is crucial. Reinventing from scratch exposes you to maximum uncertainty. Cloning lowers it dramatically. In Pabrai's words, when the downside is tiny and the upside compounding, that's a game worth playing. For modern workers in 2025, it's often the only game where time and risk align with real life. Every year, millions chase the myth of originality and stall. Meanwhile, the minority who identify tested models, copy with intent, and execute gain traction quietly yet steadily. And because tools for cloning have never been cheaper or more efficient, not using them has become its own disadvantage. For each week, someone spends dreaming up a world-changing idea. Another person steps into an existing model and is already earning, already learning, already compounding progress. So the practical question is no longer, is cloning creative enough? It's, why delay by years chasing originality when well-lit paths already exist? When you accept this, work starts sooner, results arrive earlier, and compounding gets the time it needs. That's the true advantage of shameless cloning, converting limited time into momentum that builds, instead of letting hours vanish in waiting. And that's the connection to the next principle. Most people who want to break free from the 9-to-5 complicate their exit by imagining it requires world-changing inventions. In reality, steady wins often come from something much simpler, right in front of them, waiting to be picked. Low-hanging fruit, the secret fast track. One of the fastest ways to build traction isn't dreaming about rare opportunities, but recognizing the low-hanging fruit already reachable with a modest effort. This isn't flashy, and it doesn't promise instant riches. What it does offer is a fast track to momentum, projects that can be started alongside a regular job, with minimal capital, that teach valuable skills while producing small but repeatable returns. Low-hanging fruit means finding opportunities that avoid long delays and heavy risk. These are projects that don't require quitting your job or raising funds. In 2025, thanks to new tools and platforms, the choices are broader than ever. Technology has lowered barriers so far that a single person can set up ventures in days that once demanded teams and months of costly trial and error. That's what makes this category of work a genuine fast track. It's not about hitting jackpots. It's about reliably stacking small wins. The first and most accessible path is digital products or mini courses. Years ago, building a digital course was a major production requiring websites, complicated payment systems, and advertising expenses. Now, creators can upload a lesson to a platform, set a price, and immediately reach a global audience. The best part is that one effort continues to pay back long after the work is finished. Instead of spending weekends building something massive, start this week by creating a one-page outline for a 30-minute course on a skill you already know. It could be simple: basic Excel shortcuts, cooking in small kitchens, or even phone photography tips. That outline is a direct first step toward a product that can be sold repeatedly without inventory, shipping, or high costs. The second area is newsletters. Unlike social media, where posts disappear into algorithms, email remains direct and reliable. A few hundred loyal subscribers can make a newsletter financially useful, since advertisers and sponsors look for focused, niche audiences. For someone managing a 9-to-5, the commitment is realistic: one thoughtful update a week. That could be financial tips for freelancers, tools for teachers, or productivity hacks for remote workers. Your first next step is simple. Choose one narrow theme and draft a free lead magnet, a short checklist or guide that subscribers receive when they join. From there, the system builds slowly, but each week adds credibility, consistency, and a direct line to readers. The third option is affiliate sites or templated storefronts. Instead of inventing a product, you help buyers find the best options and get rewarded in the process. Many entrepreneurs dismiss affiliate marketing as too crowded, but in practice, what matters is presentation. A small site that reviews budgeting apps or compares simple tools can rank on search results and drive targeted traffic. The upfront cost is almost nothing, and the downside is negligible. Your first step here could be registering a free site and writing one honest review of a tool you actually use, paired with its affiliate link. You don't need dozens of articles right away. The key is starting with one credible page and expanding slowly. These three options, courses, newsletters, templates, or affiliate projects, are not glamorous, and that is precisely why they are effective. Research consistently shows that most businesses are not billion-dollar startups funded by venture capital. They are the so-called boring businesses that quietly serve people's needs day after day. Pabrai himself often points to laundromats, motels, and car washes as perfect examples of steady, low-risk ventures. They lack glamour, but they produce cash flow and they compound over time. In the same way, these modern digital equivalents may not impress at dinner parties, but they build assets one layer at a time. The critical distinction is momentum instead of wealth on demand. Selling a single $10 course in the first month will not change your life, but it validates the system. A newsletter of 50 readers won't pay bills, but it establishes a base that can grow to 500, then 5,000. A modest affiliate site making $40 a month barely covers a utility bill, but stacked alongside other small streams, it grows into meaningful income. These are repeatable, low-risk pathways where the downside is limited and the upside compounds if you persist. Over a year, the skills sharpen, processes streamline, and what once felt experimental becomes a consistent source of leverage. Skeptics often object that the effort seems too small. They picture big breakthroughs and dismiss modest checks. Yet this ignores math. A $50 monthly return doubled several times through steady updates becomes hundreds, then thousands annually. The growth feels slow in the beginning, but compounding always looks invisible at first. By year 2, the trajectory is clear, showing that steady increments vastly outperform zero action. Another common mental block is embarrassment. People resist starting something simple because they assume it looks unimpressive to others. But the truth is that nearly every admired entrepreneur began with a humble start: a single guide, a basic subscription email, a small product page. Waiting for validation wastes years. Progress happens when the first step is taken without overthinking presentation. Fear of failure is another roadblock. The difference is that here, failure costs little. A course that sells poorly wastes only a weekend. A newsletter that stalls after 50 subscribers costs a few afternoons of writing. An affiliate page that fails to attract attention loses a few hours at most. These experiments protect your downside while keeping the possibility of scale intact, a principle aligned with Pabrai's philosophy of heads I win, tails I don't lose much. Think of it as groundwork for larger ventures. These projects sharpen key abilities: writing for clarity, understanding markets, learning digital tools, and building systems. Each newsletter or product adds experience that translates upward. Without these foundations, tackling higher, more complex projects is like jumping to advanced levels without learning the basics. The low-hanging fruit is vital training as well as an income stream. A practical path is clear. Pick one of the 3 categories and commit to one tangible action this week. For a digital course, write the one-page outline. For a newsletter, create the short lead magnet and set up a free sign-up page. For affiliate storefronts, post the first tool review. These tasks demand a few hours, not months. Each action inserts you into the cycle of testing and compounding, where waiting for the perfect idea never will. While it's tempting to chase complex, ambitious ventures, the sustainable advantage comes from stacking small, low-risk plays. They build confidence, cash flow, and most importantly, the knowledge of how systems compound over time. The glamour comes much later, if at all. What matters is the momentum gained from work already in motion. The key takeaway is not that every side project makes you wealthy, but that these projects give you leverage. They are the opposite of daydreaming, concrete steps that teach while they earn. And once you've built a rhythm of consistent action, the next logical step is deciding which opportunities deserve more of your limited time and focus. That shift demands a different kind of filter, one that recognizes where you hold an advantage and stops you from wasting energy where you don't. Circle of competence meets calendar control. Monish Pabrai emphasizes what he calls the circle of competence, the idea that results dramatically improve when you focus only on domains you actually understand, instead of scattering energy across every opportunity that looks appealing. He argues that while outsiders often chase whatever is fashionable, the disciplined choice is to stay with businesses, industries, and skills where the edge is already clear. This isn't just about investing, it applies to how we schedule our hours. When combined with calendar control, the circle of competence becomes one of the most effective systems for turning limited free time into compounding progress. Many beginners misuse their evenings and weekends because they're eager to taste everything at once. One week it's flipping houses, the next week it's options trading, and a week later it's launching some vague app idea with no technical ground under it. Their already limited hours get consumed by steep learning curves. Instead of producing results, they spend most of the time just trying to decode jargon, watch tutorials, and patch early mistakes. The pattern feels busy, but it goes nowhere. It resembles an investor dabbling outside their competence, creating motion without durable returns. Linking the circle of competence to real calendar decisions fixes this quickly. The framework is simple. Before blocking time for a new project, ask a filter question. Do I already carry strengths here? If the answer is yes, that project belongs inside regular, recurring calendar slots. If the answer is no, the opportunity might still be worth exploring, but only inside a smaller block labeled as learning, not your main production hours. This shift stops the common mistake of allocating prime energy to projects with no foundation. Think of a clear example. Imagine someone trained in software development. In the evenings, they're deciding between tinkering with a small digital tool they could code and sell, or entering real estate wholesaling with zero background knowledge. Both could be profitable, but the expected outcome isn't equal. By anchoring to their circle, the software route leverages years of existing knowledge. They can evaluate feasibility instantly, spot bottlenecks, and reach a usable prototype in weeks. Real estate, by contrast, forces them to juggle contracts, valuations, negotiations, and market unfamiliarity. The same 5 hours after work scatter instantly in a maze of trial and error. That's why Pabrai advocates. Stay focused where you already know the terrain, and expand deliberately when you want to widen the circle. The temptation to chase shiny new fields remains constant. Headlines glorify the next big thing, creating a sense of urgency that if you don't jump in, you'll be left out. But here's the cost. Capital can be moved around after mistakes. Time cannot. The irrecoverable expense of misallocated hours makes the calendar an even stricter discipline than money management. When you treat evening or weekend blocks as slots of capital, scattering them outside your circle means more than poor performance. It robs the compounding potential from the projects already waiting inside your competence. Momentum slows, then stalls. So how do you apply this hybrid framework instead of letting it stay theory? One exercise clarifies it quickly. On a sheet of paper, draw 2 circles. In the first, list 5 skills you already use at work. These are inside your current competence. In the second, write down 2 adjacent skills that could join that circle with focused practice, things close enough to your base that they can be learned incrementally. Finally, look at your weekly calendar and block a single 90-minute slot this week to work inside one of those items. That step is enough to draw theory into practice. It gives you a defined project inside your edge and creates a controlled channel for expanding it over time. The strength of this design lies in clear allocation rules. Hours within competence go to execution. Hours outside, if pursued at all, belong to learning blocks, small, scheduled, and intentionally constrained. That way, curiosity doesn't vanish, but it doesn't take over the main production flow either. For instance, if you're an accountant, Saturday mornings might go into building a digital product around tax guides inside the circle. Wednesday evenings, you might explore a course on design out of curiosity, but you cap it at 90 minutes. That separation ensures one area compounds momentum, while the other grows slowly without derailing progress. Every calendar hour now carries a forward-looking return rate, just like capital. An hour inside competence multiplies itself because results reinforce skills and credibility. An hour spent without competence is often a flat expenditure, unless deliberately managed as education with clear limits. Structuring the calendar, this way transforms time into investable currency. You know which slots are compounding assets and which are small experimental bets. The discipline alone prevents aimless busyness. A second benefit is clarity. Emotional drain often stems from uncertainty. Is this project good enough? Am I wasting my time? But when you work where competence already exists, signals appear faster. You can see success or failure clearly because you speak the language of the field. Clear signals improve persistence. Instead of quitting out of doubt, you adjust direction and keep going. This fuels the motivation to return to calendar slots week after week. Some worry this focus means reducing creativity, but the relationship between creativity and competence is often misunderstood. Real breakthroughs usually emerge from depth, not dabbling. A developer who builds dozens of small apps is more likely to stumble on an innovative product. A designer who repeatedly refines templates may discover entirely new service opportunities. By grounding hours in competence, you actually unlock deeper novelty. Structure doesn't block creativity, it channels it productively. So the actionable rule is simple. Treat every new project as one of two categories. If it's inside your circle, block it in prime production slots. If it's outside, categorize it as structured learning with limited hours. Abandon gray zones where experimental projects eat the hours that should be compounding. You don't need perfect foresight, you just need disciplined separation. The exercise of mapping circles also shows that expansion is possible, but only by deliberate design. You can choose to move a topic into competence by dedicating one consistent slot each week toward structured skill building. Over a year, new strengths join your circle without derailing what's already working. Expansion is slow by nature, but calendar control ensures it doesn't cannibalize the hours delivering results. This controlled growth mirrors investing. You reinvest steadily instead of chasing every shiny stock tip. The practical outcome for viewers is a schedule that compounds instead of fragments. Your evenings and weekends stop looking like scattered experiments and start resembling a portfolio. Core holdings that perform consistently, plus a small allocation for new but controlled opportunities. Once that balance locks in, compounding takes over, not just in money, but in the skills and results that stack over months of consistent hours. And that naturally leads to the next question many ask once they reach this point. How long will it take before this compounding shows visible results? Investors often calculate timelines in their portfolios, and the same need appears here. To answer that across both money and time, we use a simple but powerful mental shortcut that has guided generations of investors and can be reapplied directly to skill building and productivity. The math of compounding time, Rule of 72 rewrit. The Rule of 72 is often introduced as a shortcut for investors, but its usefulness extends far beyond portfolios. The math is straightforward. Take the number 72 and divide it by a rate of return to estimate how many years it takes for something to double. At a 12% return, 72 divided by 12 equals 6 years. That means your capital roughly doubles every 6 years, a simplified but intuitive way of seeing compounding at work. The exact precision doesn't matter. What matters is understanding how small, steady returns build into exponential growth over time. What makes this tool powerful is not the number itself, but the lens it gives. It transforms abstract growth into a timeline. For investors, the question becomes, how long until savings grow large enough to matter? That question doesn't just apply to capital. It also applies to time. The overlooked truth is that hours we invest in learning, practicing, and building compound in the same way. Skills and productivity double when effort is applied consistently, creating exponential returns just like money. Rewriting the rule of 72 for time allows us to calculate not only when money grows, but when personal capability multiplies too. Think of how skill building fits this frame. Early efforts look slow. The first few hours with new software, public speaking practice, or coding lessons feel inefficient. But once the base level of competence is built, every additional block of practice multiplies effectiveness. A task that once consumed 6 hours might later take 1. That efficiency frees hours for new projects, which then compound again. In other words, your hours start producing more hours, worth of value, exactly like reinvested dividends raising an account balance. Consider a concrete illustration. Suppose you commit 3 hours a week to a single skill, say video editing. In the beginning, producing one short video might take a full afternoon. After 3 months of structured practice, the same work may take a single hour, letting you create multiple pieces in the same time. Your output has doubled without increasing the hours. Apply the 72 framework loosely. If blocks of practice double efficiency every few months, that timeline is your personal compounding clock. The returns aren't guaranteed to follow a neat formula, but the direction is consistent. Growth comes not from sporadic effort, but from steady focus that lets improvements build on past work. Language learning follows the same curve. At the start, conversations feel impossible despite hours of study. Progress looks discouraging. Then one day, the foundation supports acceleration, phrases click, comprehension speeds up, conversations flow for minutes instead of seconds. Each new hour of study suddenly delivers much bigger results than it did at the beginning. The rule of 72 in this sense is not precise math, but a reminder. Compounding is slow at first, then fast later, and the later belongs only to those who keep showing up consistently. This reframing makes scheduling choices clearer. Instead of vague resolutions to get better at something, you can ask a practical question. How many months of consistent blocks might it take for my efficiency to double? That shifts practice from abstract hope to measurable cycles. It also reframes wasted time. Every missed session isn't just a neutral evening, it's a delay in the doubling timeline. Just as skipping 1 month of investment contributions pushes financial goals further away, skipping practice pushes back the productivity compounding date. The effect multiplies when paired with calendar control. If you reliably block 3 hours per week into focused, undistracted skill practice, you may find that every quarter or so, your effectiveness on that task has meaningfully grown. Sometimes the growth looks like producing more output in the same time. Other times, it looks like handling greater complexity in the same time frame. Either way, returns accumulate because each improvement builds on the improvements before it. What begins as awkward and slow compounds into natural and fast, with increments stacking quietly into capability that surprises you when you compare to earlier months. The key is not perfection, but consistency. Compounding only activates when inputs are steady. Just as you can't invest sporadically and expect wealth, you can't practice erratically and expect exponential leaps. The rule of 72 rewrites itself into a warning and a motivator. If you want time to double your skills, give it the regular deposits it requires. To make this practical, set a simple experiment. For the next 12 weeks, pick one skill you want to sharpen: copywriting, design, presentations, coding, anything tied to your circle of competence. Block 3 hours per week on your calendar. During each session, measure 3 outputs. For example, number of finished blog posts, draft sales pages, or working prototypes. At the end of 12 weeks, ask, have these outputs doubled compared to week 1? That's your personal time rule test. The point is not exact doubling. The point is to feel and measure compounding in a tangible way, proving to yourself that the framework works beyond money. This system also reframes opportunity cost. Consider what happens if those 3 hours per week are instead spent scattered on entertainment, aimless browsing, or unstructured busyness. The immediate loss looks small, but the true cost is the delayed doubling. By not depositing hours now, you've pushed back the horizon when output multiplies. Over years, those small delays accumulate into massive gaps in skill, income, and opportunity. Recognizing this cost makes wasted time visible in a way it rarely feels in the moment. Skeptics may question whether compounding in time works as cleanly as in finance. And it's true, skill trajectories vary. Some plateaus last longer, unexpected variables appear, and some growth curves flatten earlier. But the same is true of investing. The rule of 72 in finance was never about perfect prediction. It was about showing that steady inputs under compounding create exponential shifts that surprise those who underestimate them. Looked at this way, applying it to time is not only fair but practical. It reminds us that progress is exponential only with consistency, and small, regular deposits of effort carry disproportionate weight years later. The payoff of using this mental model extends beyond efficiency. Once a base skill compounds, it often unlocks entirely new streams of value. A designer who doubles speed can handle twice as many projects. Later, they might package expertise into teaching or consulting. Income grows not only from faster output, but from broader opportunities. Compounding in time thus translates directly into compounding in money. The two engines reinforce each other. The final takeaway is straightforward. Don't just calculate how long capital will take to double. Also calculate how long focused practice might take to double what you can produce with your hours. That single mental shift creates urgency. It changes a choice from "do I feel like practicing?" to "am I willing to postpone my doubling date?" And with a 12-week test, you can turn the theory into evidence that motivates the next cycle. Which raises a more uncomfortable reality. If compounding hours are this powerful, then every unprotected hour wasted elsewhere pushes back potential freedom. And nowhere is that loss more pronounced than in the endless stream of passive entertainment that soaks up evenings without return. From Netflix to net worth, reclaiming your hours. From that perspective, the next question becomes practical. If your most limited resource is time, how do you reclaim blocks of it from low-yield routines and redirect them into something that compounds? That's where the principle of from Netflix to net worth comes in. In today's world, streaming platforms have grown into one of the quietest but most consistent drains on available hours. Many viewers report spending multiple hours a day on them, sometimes for a movie, sometimes for background noise that spills into distracted browsing. The sessions never feel large, but across weeks and months, they stack into hundreds of hours. Those are the same hundreds many people say they don't have when talking about building a side project, experimenting with investing, or developing new skills. The point is not guilt. The point is math. Those hours already exist, but in a category that gives enjoyment only in the moment, with no return once the credits roll. That's where the hidden cost shows itself. Economists call it opportunity cost, the value of what else could have been done with the same blocks of time. When hours are directed into passive streaming, the cost is invisible because nothing breaks. But those same hours, if redirected consistently, could create assets that last for years. Missing even a modest reallocation resembles skipping deposits into a retirement account. Each skipped contribution seems minor. Over decades, it becomes a massive difference in outcome. The same is true with the capital of hours. When compounding starts later, the total return is permanently smaller. One way to see this is as a spectrum. On one side is entertainment, shows, movies, or videos that generate predictable relaxation, but only in the present moment. On the other side is asset building, time spent on writing, design, coding, investing research, or skill practice that builds outputs which remain after the session ends. Recognizing that these sides are not equal helps shift the mindset. Saying, "I have no time to create," becomes less accurate than admitting, "I've already allocated it to a use that ends the second the screen shuts off." So how do you change the allocation without swinging into extremes? Research on habit change shows that gradual swaps are more sustainable than sudden eliminations. The framework here is simple. Use entertainment as a paired or earned activity, not as the default. A practical way to apply this is through a 50-50 experiment. For every hour consumed in streaming, carve out one matching hour that same week for creation. To make it direct and achievable, test it like this. Choose 3 evenings this week where you swap 60 minutes of watching for 60 minutes of a focused side project. Track what gets done in that time and compare the sense of progress to what you experience from the shows. This is not punishment. It's a neutral experiment that reveals how much momentum a single reallocation can create. This experiment also reframes the reward cycle. Instead of trying to ban entertainment, you link it with progress. 1 hour of streaming becomes an earned relaxation that follows 1 hour of creation. The result is that guilt dissolves. Instead of endlessly wondering if you should be working instead of relaxing, you gain the clarity of balance. Over time, that balance naturally tilts toward production, not because you're forced to, but because you begin to see visible benefits and returns from the creative hours, while entertainment remains the same. A real-world example makes this clear. Imagine an individual who usually spends 15 to 20 hours a week on shows. Using the swap method, they redirect half of that into creating. Without adding any extra hours to their life, they suddenly accumulate the equivalent of a part-time schedule invested into building. Across a year, that becomes hundreds of hours banked into design work, product launches, blog writing, or skill practice. Compare the outcomes of 2 versions of that year. One leaves nothing when the episodes are done, the other leaves a digital guide, a small subscriber base, a launched storefront, or an acquired skill that keeps paying back. The choice is not about sacrifice, it's about which pile you want those same hours deposited into. When redirected, these reclaimed hours are enough to reach completion on real projects. A year of repeated blocks can produce multiple digital products or an entire archive of newsletters. Even a modestly successful one of those can generate recurring returns, often passive after the setup. The math is straightforward. Hundreds of hours funneled into creation guarantee at least one meaningful outcome that remains long after the year ends. That is compounding put into practice. Another overlooked benefit is psychological. When you pair leisure with creation, entertainment itself becomes more enjoyable. Watching back-to-back shows for hours often feels passive and blurry. But when a session of building precedes leisure, the show feels like earned downtime. The contrast makes it more rewarding, not less. Rather than productivity stripping joy from daily life, it enhances it by making relaxation conscious. You no longer wonder if you're wasting time, because the building was already done first. Practical application does not mean massive undertakings. Beginners often imagine building a side business means quitting jobs and running complex systems. In reality, reclaimed hours can go into small, steady activities: drafting 1 blog post each week, designing 1 template for sale, outlining 1 lesson a month, recording short videos, or practicing investment research. Each output becomes an asset, something that exists independently, grows in value, or builds experience. The shift is subtle but powerful. Evening hours stop vanishing and start stacking forward. The common objection is exhaustion. After a long workday, streaming feels like the easier option. But paradoxically, effort often restores energy more than idle distraction does. Completing 1 creative block builds momentum. It generates a sense of victory that carries into the next day. Compare 2 scenarios: collapsing into 4 hours of shows every night versus structuring 2 hours of creation followed by 1 episode. The second routine typically leaves people reporting more energy, not less, because accomplishment creates motivation instead of draining it. The important realization is that more hours are not what anyone needs. Every person already receives the same 24 to allocate. The gap between no time available and progress building steadily is often just a single experiment in redirection. With the 50-50 swap, 3 evenings are enough to test difference. The results are tangible within weeks. Projects accumulate, visible output appears, and confidence increases. The process is repeatable, and as weeks stack up, so do assets. The larger lesson is that creating leverage doesn't require radical lifestyle overhauls. It comes from deliberate exchanges where passive time is redirected into outputs that can grow, compound, or support new opportunities. Entertainment still has its place, but not as the automatic default. It becomes a conscious choice that follows contribution. Small signals of progress transform missing time into visible results. And that is often the difference between years that blur past and years that build toward financial freedom. Once these reclaimed hours are working for you, the obvious next step is to ask how to maximize their impact. If time is compounding like capital, the tools and systems you choose to use within those reclaimed blocks determine how much value gets created from them. And today, those tools look very different than they did even a few years ago. Modern tools for efficient cloning and investing. Modern tools for efficient cloning and investing change what's possible for someone balancing a job and a side project. Just a few years ago, getting reliable financial data or building a small store often meant long hours of manual work. Now, with the right set of platforms, the baseline effort has collapsed. The difference lies not in having dozens of apps, but in selecting a handful that directly remove friction points and protect your limited hours. A good starting place is the basic organization of time itself. Todoist or Things is often enough. Both allow you to block tasks against a schedule and receive reminders that sync across devices. Instead of juggling sticky notes or open browser tabs, you end up with a single list tied to deadlines. The benefit is direct. Less mental juggling and more clarity about what must be done during the few hours outside your 9 to 5. From there, think about the hours wasted repeating admin work. Zapier gives anyone the ability to automate repetitive tasks without coding. For example, it can save every new email attachment into a cloud folder or send Slack alerts when a sale comes through Shopify. That one setup erases dozens of small chores each week. The payoff is immediate. Instead of dripping hours across minor admin, you preserve them for the work that compounds. Consider meeting notes, another common time sink. Otter. AI creates transcripts in real time, letting you skim the important items instead of listening back to recordings. This isn't about replacing human attention, but about shaving off the dead minutes lost to replay and manual typing. For someone building projects in evenings, the difference could be an hour saved per week, enough for one extra iteration of creative work. On the entrepreneurship side, Shopify paired with pre-built templates solves what once required developers. Instead of hand-coding pages, you can launch a storefront that already uses layouts proven to convert. The question shifts from "how do I design this?" to "what product twist do I add on top?" That leap saves weeks of trial and error and places your effort where it matters, on differentiation rather than foundation. When outsourcing becomes necessary, Fiverr Pro offers vetted freelancers who can handle specialized tasks without the uncertainty of random gig platforms. It's not about delegating everything, but about handing off small bottlenecks. That could mean paying a designer for a logo while you focus on testing products. The short-term result is speed. The long-term effect is that you don't stall on details you're not skilled in. Analytics is another area where hours disappear unnecessarily. Analytify delivers clean summaries of site and newsletter data without flooding you with metrics that require interpretation. Instead of opening multiple dashboards, you see the essentials at a glance. Which posts drove clicks, where visitors came from, and what campaigns are converting. That clarity prevents the mistake of acting on feelings instead of data. Each of these tools matters only if they pass a simple test. Do they clearly save time or improve accuracy where you work? It's tempting to collect platforms because they look helpful. That's where tool overload becomes a trap. Adding app after app creates the same problem you meant to solve: fragmented focus. The research is clear. Efficiency doesn't come from piling on software. It comes from identifying the largest friction point in your workflow and using one or two tools to remove it. An easy way to avoid overload is to start with a minimal stack. A starter setup implemented in one evening is realistic. 1. Build a weekly task schedule inside Todoist. 2. Create one Zapier link to eliminate a repetitive admin task. And 3. Delegate a single small task through Fiverr Pro. This small stack replaces scattered effort with systemized flow. The speed of results is the point. You feel the regained time immediately, which provokes the motivation to keep stacking progress. The broader lesson here is not that software creates wealth. Tools do not do the work for you. They eliminate waste so that the work you already intend to do is preserved, sharper, and positioned to compound. Without control, evenings tend to dissolve in scattered admin. The same documents reformatted, the same figures chased across multiple tabs. With a small set of targeted platforms, those tasks collapse to automation or delegation, allowing every session of work to start closer to execution. This advantage becomes clearest when you compare iteration cycles. Someone working manually might spend 6 months building and testing one project. Someone leaning on templates, automation, and streamlined analytics can test multiple in the same span. That acceleration multiplies the number of learning loops. Compounding enters not because a person worked harder, but because the system allowed them to work on more meaningful iterations. The tool is not the creativity, it's the multiplier. Of course, the discipline here is restraint. Pick the one area that costs the most hours, whether that's note-taking, email tasks, analytics, or storefront design, and plug in a single modern solution. Then observe the hours gained. Expanding from there should happen slowly because each new platform must justify itself by cutting effort in half compared to before. Anything less is noise disguised as productivity. The hidden benefit is psychological. Once you see how much lighter routine tasks become, motivation to keep building strengthens. No longer does an evening of progress feel heavy and endless. Instead, you enter work sessions with clearer priorities and lighter overhead. The feeling of progress builds self-reinforcement, which makes consistency easier to sustain. That consistency is where compounding begins, small, repeatable deposits of time spent entirely on leverage rather than friction. The overall goal is to flip how your hours are being used. Without systems, energy gets consumed by setup, repetition, and mistakes. With a tool stack limited to high-impact platforms, those hours shift into execution, testing, and direct value creation. What once required 10 evenings now requires 3. That difference is what opens space for parallel efforts, running a side hustle, investing smarter, or practicing a skill, while still preserving time for rest. Once this shift takes hold, the question naturally evolves. If you can strip away hours of wasted effort through targeted tools, how should the remaining time be structured to compound most effectively? That is not about working more, but about allocating the reclaimed blocks with sharper intent. And the way successful builders already structure that time may look very different from the assumptions most people still have. The real schedule of wealth builders. When people picture the routines of wealthy entrepreneurs or long-term investors, the image often looks extreme. The stereotype is someone surviving on little sleep, chained to a desk, grinding 100-hour weeks in a blur of meetings and constant hustle. That image feels believable because it looks intense. It fits the story that more hours equals more reward. The reality, however, goes in the opposite direction. People who sustain wealth long-term are not measuring success in raw hours. They are precise with allocation. They know which tasks multiply, which tasks can be removed, and they repeat only the patterns that keep stacking returns. From outside, their schedules may even seem light. The effect, however, is that every hour invested delivers more momentum than hundreds of scattered ones. Compare the two paths. A typical worker often spends entire weeks busy but not productive. Their calendar is packed with meetings, endless emails, daily chores, and whatever entertainment fills the leftover space. They end each week exhausted, but nothing has moved forward. That is what it looks like when activity is maximized but leverage is absent. Wealth builders structure differently. Their calendars are not about doing more, they are about doing less, but in protected blocks. Just as an investor pulls money out of stagnant holdings to double down on proven growth, they marshal time toward focused slots and cut the rest. Now let's translate this into a week someone working a normal 9 to 5 could actually follow. Assume this person leaves work around 6 in the evening. Many fall into the pattern of drifting, scrolling social feeds, watching whatever show auto-plays, or trying to squeeze random work in late when energy is gone. The structured pattern looks very different. On weekdays, the priority is a single protected block. Here's one template. From 6:30 to 8, you handle dinner, family, or rest. At 8 o'clock, a 90-minute deep work slot begins. No multitasking, no passive noise, no switching tasks. Only one focus: building a product, writing a draft, or analyzing investments. At 9:30, the block ends and the next half hour to an hour can be light leisure, winding down before sleep. 2 blocks like this across the workweek is enough to create consistency without overload. If you repeat it 4 nights, that's 6 to 7 focused hours in 1 week, achieved without staying up into exhaustion or cutting essentials. Weekends are structured for heavier lifts. Instead of being consumed by random errands stretched across both days, set 2 protected 3-hour sessions, one Saturday morning, one Sunday morning. Each is treated as immovable. These sessions go to core creative or research work. A third smaller block, 2 or 3 hours on Saturday afternoon, can be used for polishing output, reviewing progress, or learning an adjacent skill. The rest of the weekend then opens up. By Sunday evening, you've completed 3 serious focus sessions, while still leaving vast time for family and recharge. Altogether, this model produces roughly 14 to 16 hours per week of uninterrupted, high-quality effort. Measured over a month, that's about 60 hours. Stretch it to a year, and the worker now owns more than 700 hours devoted purely to compounding projects. That number equals almost 4 extra full-time work months, but delivered in a way that never breaks energy or health. The key rule with this pattern is that every block produces evidence. Random effort creates the illusion of movement. Focused effort creates trackable outputs. Set a simple metric. Count results per block. 1 draft outline, 1 article, 1 short video, 1 new product listing. Each block should end with something visible. Do this for 4 weeks and look back. If you followed 8 evening blocks and 3 weekend blocks, you should have at least 15 tangible outputs. By quarter's end, you may see 45. That is how time begins multiplying. You don't track hours, you track the small assets built during those hours. Let's run 2 comparisons. The first worker uses this pattern. By the end of 3 months, they have dozens of small creations, product pages online, early articles published, portfolio pieces finished. The second worker operates without structure. Nights are absorbed by shows and multitasking. Weekends contain well-intended hours that drift into errands, scrolling, or tinkering. At the end of 3 months, they may have 2 or 3 half-finished projects. Both felt equally busy. Only one has proof to show for it. For investments, the same rhythm applies. If weekday blocks are dedicated to systematic research, scanning annual reports, practicing valuation, testing small trades, then after a year this worker has compiled hundreds of active research hours. They have opinions supported by models instead of hunches. Judgment compounds. Capital decisions improve. The worker outside this pattern hears the same market chatter but never leaves amateur stage. An overlooked benefit is the way blocks reduce guilt. Many people carry low-level anxiety that they should be doing more. They never feel fully present when resting. Time blocking removes that. When the 90-minute evening session is complete, entertainment or family time is protected. Leisure becomes deliberate, not stolen. The schedule honors both production and rest, making each reinforce the other. Consistency replaces guilt, and daily life feels lighter. Another reinforcement comes from identity. When blocks repeat week after week, 8 p.m. is recognized internally as focus time. The environment is arranged accordingly. Motivation shifts from conscious decision into automatic default. This reduces the friction that usually derails new habits. What once required willpower turns into a standard pattern, the same way monthly investment contributions become background noise after a few cycles. This design also explains compounding in practice. In the first weeks, results feel small, a few drafts, a few reviews, a handful of online steps. But 2 months in, the pile grows. 6 months in, dozens of outputs exist. After a year, there is a body of work that makes opportunities easier to capture. Products exist to sell, skills are sharpened, or capital is invested with real strategy. Just as early investment returns feel minor before soaring decades later, project returns stack slowly, then visibly accelerate. The curve bends upward only when repetition is preserved long enough. The crucial message here is not sacrifice but sustainability. You don't need 100-hour weeks. You don't need to eliminate all rest. 4 short focus sessions across the week, plus 3 robust weekend blocks are enough to build escape velocity if repeated. Over time, those hours compound into the portfolio of skills, products, and assets that shift dependence away from a paycheck. The difference between the exhausted busy worker and the calm wealth builder is not hours worked, but hours structured. One spends energy everywhere and watches it dissolve. The other concentrates effort into predictable blocks, each producing output, each reinforcing the next. Over the course of a single year, the divergence becomes impossible to ignore. And this is exactly where many people stumble. They may have the structure in theory, But in practice, they fall into what looks like hard work but is. Hours vanish into colorful planners, endless tweaks to apps, or multitasking screens that leave nothing accomplished. These traps give the appearance of productivity without creating any asset at all. Avoiding productivity traps with humor. Productivity today is flooded with distractions disguised as help. Everywhere you look, there's a new app claiming to sharpen your edge, a new hack promising to double your focus, or another guide laying out the perfect morning structure. Most of these sell aesthetics over results. In actual practice, the same three traps explain why so many people stay busy without moving forward: doomscrolling, fake hustle apps, and multitasking. They appear harmless in the moment, but stacked over weeks and months, they erode the very hours that could have compounded into something lasting. Doomscrolling is the first culprit. Open a single notification, and suddenly 30 minutes are gone in a blur of world news, debates in the comments, trending clips, or memes. Platforms are engineered to extend this loop, so it feels almost voluntary while happening. By the end, your brain holds random fragments, but no action took place. The true damage isn't just the time, it's the rewiring of your attention. After consuming dozens of quick hits, sitting back down to tackle a demanding project feels like a steep climb. Focus is harder to rebuild than people realize, and each time doomscrolling reinforces this cycle, your ability to work deeply shrinks a little further. The response looks almost too simple, but it works. Instead of banning information or unplugging entirely, compress it into scheduled windows. Maybe that's 10 minutes in the morning and 10 at night. Outside those windows, social and news feeds stay closed. This contained structure protects most of your attention while still giving space to stay informed. The test is easy. Tonight, pick 2 set times to check news and commit to locking your phone outside those. Already, you'll reclaim blocks of energy that normally vanish unnoticed. The second trap is fake hustle apps. These are the tools that flood your screen with colors, streaks, notifications, and progress bars. At first, opening them sparks a rush of motivation. Charts move, streaks flash, or your task list gets a confetti explosion. Underneath, nothing meaningful was created. Hours sink into rearranging, labeling, or adjusting categories while the actual project, writing the draft, recording the lesson, analyzing the company, sits untouched. The beauty of many modern tools is deceptive. They reward the behavior of feeling busy rather than delivering results. The danger is how convincing this reward feels. People end the day satisfied with activity, forgetting assets are what compound, not digital badges. The fix is a short question. Before opening or using a productivity tool, ask, will this produce a tangible output by the end of the session? If the answer is no, if the only gain is a prettier dashboard or rearranged categories, skip it. Replace that time with a single concrete step. Draft 1 page, post 1 article, complete 1 analysis. Outputs prove progress, not streak apps. A journal entry or a completed video will move you further toward freedom than 5 hours tweaking colors in a planner no one else will see. Even writing tasks down on paper passes the test if it drives real completion. Multitasking is the third trap. For years, people bragged about answering emails while being on calls or checking alerts while flipping between projects. The image was efficiency, handling more at once. The reality, proven repeatedly, is that each switch requires a recovery fee. When your brain jumps between contexts, an email thread, a meeting's key points, a chart in a browser tab, it cannot fully process any of them. 10 minutes vanish each time rebuilding where you left off. By the end of a week spent multitasking, energy feels depleted, but output looks shallow. The burn doesn't come from workload, it comes from scattered attention. The correction is ruthless monotasking. Take one 90-minute block and commit it to a single activity. Do not let any notification, side conversation, or new tab intrude. Finish the draft, process the analysis, or record the module from start to a milestone. Only then do you switch. It's unglamorous, but it's proven. One clean block at full focus outproduces 3 fragmented sessions stitched between pings and glances. Anyone can test this tonight, even with just an hour. The results speak fast. The satisfaction is larger, and the work is deeper. Humor makes these traps easier to spot in yourself. Picture the proud moment when someone spends 3 hours color-coding their weekly calendar with 6 categories, shades, and icons, but not one email or draft gets completed. The finished calendar looks spectacular, a piece of digital art. Yet when Monday comes, the undone tasks are still waiting untouched. In contrast, another person scribbles 3 priorities on a sticky note, acts, and ends the evening with 2 of them complete. Screenshots that impress won't build projects. Tangible results will. Or picture someone boasting about juggling 4 productivity platforms in a day: time tracker, habit log, routine note taker, and task board, all synced with pings, alerts, and reminders. They spend energy updating apps, while someone else quietly finishes a major deliverable with pen and paper. The difference isn't the tool, it's what got produced. Laughing at these exaggerations helps disarm the habits. Once you recognize yourself in them, it becomes harder to repeat without awareness. The important thing to grasp is that productivity traps aren't only silly, they carry costs that accumulate over years. An hour lost today isn't just an hour gone. It delays the cycle of compounding. Missed deep work, missed creation, missed practice, it all pushes the doubling point further away. Doomscrolling adds no assets. Hustle apps simulate progress. Multitasking erodes focus. Together, they explain why so many hardworking people exhaust themselves without seeing enough forward movement to justify it. The alternative path doesn't require brilliance or elite discipline. It only requires consistency in avoiding the pretenders. 3 corrections, scheduled news checks, value-first tool tests, and 90-minute monotask blocks save more momentum than most elaborate productivity systems combined. They restore attention to the place compounding actually occurs, creating work that lasts. Here's a direct challenge. For the next 48 hours, pick one trap and apply the single fix. Maybe you compress information checks into 2 windows. Maybe you question whether a tool creates a tangible output before you open it. Maybe you commit to one 90-minute block without interruptions. Test one of these changes tonight or tomorrow, then track the effect. To hold yourself to it, report in the comments which trap you chose and what happened. Even small stories of output carry value, because they prove the shift works on ordinary schedules, not just theory. Once you've recovered those wasted hours, the question is just, what now? But where can the energy be placed so that it multiplies? And that leads naturally to the deeper edge that separates people who quietly accelerate their wealth from those who stay stuck. An edge that comes not from guarding every resource for yourself, but from a surprising source that reshapes how opportunities find you. The giver's productivity edge. Most people imagine that building wealth requires guarding every resource, protect every trick, hide every method, hold back insights until payment appears. This view paints success as a contest of scarcity, with winners measured by how little they share. That kind of mindset might produce occasional spikes of output, but evidence shows it rarely sustains momentum. When interactions rely only on extraction, trust never piles up and opportunities dry out. Ironically, self-preservation often slows progress. A different approach, one rooted in contribution, tends to multiply it. This idea is sometimes referred to as the giver's productivity edge. At first glance, it feels counterintuitive. Why would someone share tools freely in a world that rewards exclusivity? Why publish guides that others might use instead of charging for them? Why reveal strategies to competitors? The surface logic says these are mistakes, that by helping, you give away your advantage. In practice, the opposite tends to be true. When you share useful work, you assemble credibility, attract partnerships, and build goodwill that converts into surprising opportunities. The result becomes its own flywheel of momentum. To explain this effect, organizational psychologist Adam Grant describes 3 categories: takers, who try to secure more than they give; matchers, who trade value evenly; and givers, who contribute without expecting immediate repayment. Over a long horizon, he found that givers often outperform precisely because they create ecosystems that support them back. Mapped to productivity, this means takers use their hours guarding information, while givers spend theirs producing resources that others can use. Over time, that difference compounds because the latter attracts a network far larger than any one person could sustain alone. Consider a side project creator. A taker version hides processes, sells only polished products, and ignores chances to help. The reach remains limited. The circle never expands because each interaction requires payment. With a giver orientation, the same person publishes short guides, admits mistakes, and posts fixes that reduce friction for others. At first, it looks like unpaid extra labor. Soon, credibility grows. Readers cite the work, peers send referrals, and collaborations emerge. That visibility converts into paying opportunities without requiring a sales pitch. The seeds of trust create results beyond what guarded secrecy could achieve. Investing offers the same contrast. One analyst logs ideas privately and keeps notes hidden. Another publishes summaries or frameworks in open communities. The first collects knowledge but stays isolated. The second gains recognition, feedback, and eventually better deal flow. They become trusted faster. The reputation itself, built by consistent contribution, evolves into a durable asset. This doesn't mean draining yourself by giving endlessly. Effective generosity uses scale. Writing one public article that clarifies a framework helps hundreds, sometimes thousands, without consuming more of your time. Sharing a free template or one-page guide distributes value across many people at once. That's strategic giving, broad enough to compound, light enough to sustain. What fails is overextending, spending entire evenings on individual requests repeated 100 times. Givers who burn out usually confuse scaled contribution with bottomless obligation. The edge remains only when boundaries exist. One practical experiment illustrates how to test this safely. Take one work block this week and create a small resource, perhaps a checklist, a one-page tutorial, or a starter template. Publish it openly online for free. Do not ask for payment or immediate subscriptions. Treat it instead as credibility capital. Then, over the following days, track what happens, count comments, mentions, or direct messages that arrive. These signals are proxy metrics for trust. They show how far one act of generosity circulates. Repeat the process monthly, and you begin building an identifiable reputation as someone who consistently creates value. The personal benefit is more than external recognition. Explaining your process forces clarity on your own methods. Teaching reveals weak assumptions because others question them, giving you feedback loops that solo work would not. Each guide you publish refines your own thinking. In a sense, every act of giving doubles as accelerated self-learning. Takers give up this multiplier by hiding. Givers enjoy it naturally. Caution still matters. There are risks in being exploited. Some people assume a giving pattern means unlimited free labor, and they try to offload effort onto anyone helpful. The way around this is to calibrate your generosity. Share outputs that scale, guides, videos, templates, articles. Decline heavy one-off unpaid work that consumes your reserves. Signal your boundaries clearly. Open contributions are free, but personalized engagements may require a fee. This way, you preserve the compounding effect without draining your most valuable hours. Inside companies, the dynamic plays out too. People remember the colleague who provided support without demanding payback, or the teammate who solved problems while spreading credit. Leaders recall them when advancement opportunities appear. Conversely, the taker, who guards every skill for themselves, might complete tasks well, but rarely earns loyalty. Progress slows when no one advocates for them. Productivity in raw checkboxes ignores this compounding effect. The goodwill that multiplies returns over time. Now imagine carrying this approach into side hustles. One evening block could go toward producing a weekly newsletter that shares insights or tools. Readers may never buy anything directly, but some will convert into clients, partnerships, or referrals. Another block could focus on answering targeted questions in online communities, pointing people to useful resources. On the surface, it's indirect. In reality, goodwill expands faster than paid advertising, and unlike ads, it compounds instead of disappearing the moment a budget runs dry. The same compounding logic applies outside of money. Financial assets double when reinvested. Credibility doubles when deposits of trust ripple outward. Every time you give value, you contribute to a standing balance others draw on when deciding whom to recommend, follow, or support. The yield of this balance is unpredictable in the short term, but consistently positive in the long term. Consistency is what matters. Small, repeatable contributions build a durable track record and define how you're perceived. Random big efforts without continuity don't move the needle. The assumption that hustle must be solitary and self-focused misleads many beginners. They picture growth as a zero-sum race. Yet those who build enduring wealth almost always benefit from ecosystems sustained by their contributions. They don't climb alone, they rise because networks form beneath them. That's why giving should be reframed. It is not charity, and it is not weakness. Done with boundaries, it is a strategy. The result is a double compounding effect. Hours spent on side projects build clear financial assets. Hours spent contributing value compound into credibility capital. Together, these two streams accelerate outcomes far beyond what isolated self-preservation could achieve. The giver's productivity edge is not a romantic ideal, it is a structural advantage. Once you see that structure clearly, the implications are practical. You no longer ask only how to protect your hours. You ask how to position them so each block produces not just work completed, but trust stored. Over years, that quiet account grows large enough to back opportunities you cannot foresee. And while no single act delivers the breakthrough, the steady rhythm of credibility deposits ensures preparation meets opportunity when it finally arrives. Understanding this shifts how you design your week. Self-protection alone caps your ceiling. Contribution opens it wider. And the true test is not whether you feel busy, but whether each hour compounds into assets, financial or reputational, that outlast the single session. With this mindset in place, the next step is straightforward. What matters most is not waiting for the ideal conditions or a rare burst of external luck. What matters is how you shape the hours you already control and the designs you choose for them from week to week. Wealth in 2025 isn't about chasing perfect timing or waiting for markets to align. It's about protecting your hours, cloning proven models, and using the right tools to remove friction. These simple levers compound when applied consistently. Here's one immediate step. Tonight, block a 90-minute window for a single focused project. Then, within the next 30 days, select one idea or model to clone and test. Treat both as experiments, not commitments. You're proving that results come from action, not intention. So, which 1 hour will you reclaim this week? Comment below and start the cycle.